Welcome to the Microdosing for Healing podcast. I'm your host, Casey Garrett, and together we'll be discovering and learning from inspiring voices of healers, medicine keepers, and visionaries. Every episode, we'll explore the world of health, vibrant wellness, and natural medicine for a new era of human society. Welcome to today's episode. Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's episode. So today we have another beautiful trio panel episode around the topic of building psychedelic community. So I love this subject because as the psychedelic world and the ecosystem grows, I feel like the symphony of community building has a unique role to play as we grow. The community builders in the space are going to be the connectors in a lot of ways and keep in touch and kind of keep the mycelial nature of this work going and growing. So I'm really delighted today to introduce you to three of my colleagues in the space who are the community builders. So please welcome Jonathan Quest Brown, a sacred facilitator, integration coach, and co-founder of the Three Rivers Psychedelic Society. Quest embarked on his healing journey after losing his mother in 2018. As both a teacher and student of yoga, sound therapy, meditation, Reiki, and sacred earth medicines, Quest integrates shamanic and modern techniques to help others unlock self-healing and spiritual growth, deeply connecting with their inner wisdom. Also, Henry Winslow, the founder of Tricycle Day, is with us today. If you have not checked out Tricycle Day, I highly recommend jumping on that list. It is a free twice-a-week newsletter on psychedelic research, policy, and business that's actually fun to read. With a professional background in healthcare, marketing, and yoga, he is now focused on making psychedelic education accessible to all. Last but not least, Saad Al-Olimat is one of the very first people I met in the space when I began my work back in 2020. And Saad graciously appears in our Microdosing for Healing course. He is also the co-founder of the Psychedelic Pharmacists Association, as well as the founder of Silo Health. I'm really excited to share all of them with you today and dive deeply more into their roots and inspiration for building community. So thank you all for being with us today.
Thanks for having us on. This is awesome.
Thank you. Thank you.
Perfect. Let's start off with Quest. So Quest, all in my experience of community and building community, no matter how big a community gets, you can always trace back the roots of a community to its founder and its founding inspiration. So I'd love for each of you to go around and share a bit about what sparked this desire in you? What were kind of the pivotal moments in your life as you stepped into the world of psychedelics and healing?
Okay. Yeah. No, first I want to say thank you. It's really an honor to be here with all of you. As you read in my bio, right? What sparked my journey, which I think is important to go back to the roots, was the passing of my mother. But it not only was it her, it was other members in that generation that also passed within like a very close time. And what led me to like finding my community is that I felt alone in that process. And that's when I stepped into the world of not only psychedelics, but yoga and meditation. I just felt very alone in that process. Although I was going to, yoga classes up the street, right? It still felt really like an alien stepping into, the world of human beings, right? And because it's just like me, I'm the only male, only Black male in the yoga classes. So it was just very, very, felt really, really alone. So what had happened along that process, I think I was very alone for about 2 years. And then I started to find a community of other people doing the same work, I didn't know it was in Pittsburgh. This is when the world kind of shut down, 2020 or 2019 around that time. And, Clubhouse came online and I started to find other people around the world, right? Because we're all locked in the house. So Clubhouse was like my first time finding other people. I'm like, wow, this is amazing. Other people out here are doing similar work. So that's when I started to find my community, although I didn't feel like it was home. It was spread out around the world. And at the same time, I was losing, friends and family because, again, I was like the oddball going on this journey. So that eventually led to me, fast forward, like also feeling like, where's the space for men, right? Because a lot of these spaces I was showing up in were all women, which is nothing wrong with that. But I also needed the space for, myself as a man. And I started to create men's circles. So it really started with men's circles in person. And I can remember the first one I did. I didn't know who was going to show up. I just put something out there and I had like 16 guys show up the first time. I only knew two. So that continued on, then evolved into online men's circles as well. And all at the same time, while I'm going on my journey as a sacred facilitator, also an integration coach, and fast forward, being back at his home base here with Sod in Pittsburgh, PA, I felt it was important to, focus on the home base. And that's where TRIPS, Three Rivers Psychedelic Society, came about with myself and a couple other partners who are involved in the space. We just kind of came together to, focus on the home base, because it's important to focus on where your feet are planted. And my feet are planted here in Pittsburgh, PA, right now and for the foreseeable future. So that's how I got into it.
Love it. Thank you so much. Henry, how about you?
I'm glad that Quest got a chance to answer that question first, because there are some similarities in my story, maybe a little bit out of sequence, but definitely some shared experiences there. For me, the doorway into psychedelics came through my fascination, obsession, whatever you want to call it, with yoga. So I started practicing yoga in 2010, and it became an immediate obsession for me. Like, very first class I ever took, I was kind of convinced to come with, I had been a springboard diver. So a former teammate of mine convinced me to come to a yoga class because he said, you'll like this. You get to maintain your flexibility and strength, but also you get to kind of play around with acrobatic tricks. So that was what drew me in. But even the very first class that I took, I could sense that this practice was working on me at a much deeper level than the physical. I didn't really have the language for it. I just knew something powerful was happening, and that drew me back. So I developed a really serious, disciplined practice that took me so far into it that, for a few years, I was a full-time yoga teacher, traveling the world, doing workshops and retreats, and even conducting teacher trainings, all of that. And for anybody who has had, more than a flirtatious kind of, passing through a yoga practice, that there's a lot more than the physical. So I got into the philosophy side, started reading all of these texts, and what many consider to be the fundamental text of yoga is something called the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, and it lays out an eightfold path of yoga. And the last three steps are all related to contemplative practice. It's three stages of meditation. So the asana is really just a small piece of the puzzle. And so I got really into these ideas and was grappling with them intellectually, and trying to find my way through the direct experience of it. But the final stage, which is called samadhi, is described as a non-dual state. And this was really intriguing to me. Okay, this idea that there's a self and the other in the way that we go around this 3D reality, but that's actually just an illusion. It's called Maya in yoga philosophy. But if you achieve this state of samadhi, or the state of yoga, then that illusion falls away, and one sense of self dissolves, and there is only the awareness of consciousness in unity, just a oneness of everything. And that was just such a captivating idea to me, but one that I resigned that I would never really experience myself. It felt like something from a bygone era. Like, I'm not an Indian ascetic who can disappear into a cave for 5 years and fast in the darkness. And yet a friend of mine then, who was equally enamored with yoga and geeking out about it all, said, "Hey, I just had this incredible experience. You got to come try it." And that led me to my first psychedelic ceremony. and it was with bufalvaria, so 5-MeO-DMT. So I pretty much went from like 0 to infinity there, and it completely transformed me. That's what brought me into even the awareness of psychedelics, and sparked my interest. Now, that was many years ago. I didn't think that I would do anything professionally with psychedelics until what I saw was, after that, I developed a pretty, strong interest in psychedelics. I was reading a lot of the news, following the media landscape. And around January of last year is when I launched Tricycle Day. And the reason I did it is I found that there wasn't really anything that was written for me. There was a lot of content that was very demanding, required a certain level of literacy, either on the scientific side or on the legal side. And that was appealing to people that I would say, were already immersed in the space, probably professionals working in this space. And there was also quite a bit of content kind of on the total other end of the spectrum that was geared toward maybe a more neo-spiritual kind of crowd. Some might call it woo-woo, kind of the 5D language. And I just felt like, hey, we're at this moment where psychedelics are becoming interesting to a lot more people in the mainstream, just everyday people, and either ends of that spectrum could be alienating for totally different reasons. But I felt like there was this big cohort at the center of the bell curve that was not being spoken to. I considered myself among that group, and it was only growing. So I took a chance and said, hey, I'm going to create a version of this that is accessible, light. And then my big bet was like, hey, it could actually be entertaining too. Let's make it fun. Let's infuse some humor in there and see if people can like enjoy this with some levity. And that's the story on how Tricycle Day came to be.
Thank you so much. Saad, how about you?
Thank you guys for sharing your stories there. And I just want to say as a member of one of Quest's or attendee of one of Quest's men's workshops, absolutely beautiful spaces to be a part of. I was able to work through a lot of content there. So thanks for having that as an offering for the community. And Henry, what you're saying is, I'm excited to check out your newsletter. I haven't checked it out yet. To be honest, I've seen it, but there's so many things to see in the psychedelic space as it continues to evolve. And I've seen Tricycle Day, but I haven't fully explored it. So what you just shared is definitely resonates with me, and I'm 100% going to check it out. So thank you guys for sharing. So for me, it's the way I got into this space and started working on community building was through my own personal mental health journey. As a pharmacy student here in Pittsburgh at Duquesne University, I felt very isolated, very far away from home. Friend groups sort of disappearing a bit, as well as I got more and more into my coursework. And fortunately, I was already exposed to psychedelics when I got to this pivotal point of my just really hitting rock bottom. I was actually hospitalized, and for having a mental health episode, I just admitted myself to the hospital because I broke. And that's when I recognized, okay, like I need to do something about my mental health. So this crossroads was, do I want to pursue the traditional like antidepressant, anxiolytic route with pharmaceuticals, or do I want to explore psilocybin mushrooms? And fortunately, I've done a lot of reading on it before, up to that point, and I decided to prepare myself for a large dose experience. Prepared myself, had my experience, and that was everything for me. It completely opened my eyes up to recognizing how these like I've had these shackles on me that were all self-imposed, and taking ownership over my own life, taking ownership over my actions, and cutting out the toxic, whether it be habits or environments I found myself in, and to doing something that felt more aligned, that really filled my cup versus always kept it empty. And, I was talking to some of my close friends in university. I'm like, hey, I just had this mushroom experience, and, I saw this and I felt this. And right away, people started getting like closed off. Like, I could see the body language shift. And some people would be, oh man, you were tripping. I'm like, yeah, I guess so, but it was much more than that. And so I didn't really have anyone to talk to, but I found myself integrating the insights. And from that session, what it led me to recognizing I want to be a man of service. And I got very active in my school of pharmacy. I held many leadership positions. And one leadership position I held was with the American Pharmacists Association. So a year after that session, I was a leader in this student society, this student organization, and they flew us out to Seattle for a conference, the American Pharmacists Association conference. So nothing about psychedelics, all pharmacist driven, pharmacist focused. And it was a Sunday at the very end of the conference. And again, up to this point, it's been a year. I've had no one to talk to about my psychedelic experiences. And I have my laptop with me, getting some work done. I'm just traveling around, I'm just wandering around downtown Seattle. And I go to a coffee shop, I get some dumplings. I'm just having a day, getting some work done, exploring the terrain. And I end up at a wood stove bagel coffee shop. And I get my bagel, I get my coffee, I sit down, and I open my laptop, and it's dead. But way across the room in the corner, there's this one table with an outlet, with a lone outlet. So I go, I plug my laptop in, I get some work done, and immediately to the left of me, there's a group of about 10 to 12 people. In the middle of the table, it says SPS, and people have name tags on that say, "Hi, my name is so and so." And I'm getting work done, and like we're right beside each other. And they start talking about Rick and Morty, and I love Rick and Morty. So I laughed, and we acknowledged each other, just smiled. And I'm getting work done, getting work done, getting work done. And then they start talking about ayahuasca and Timothy Leary, Ram Dass, like psilocybin. They're saying all these terms, and I'm like, whoa, what's going on? And they're like, oh, hey, we're the Seattle Psychedelic Society. We talk about psychedelics at a coffee shop on Sundays. Would you care to join us for conversation? And I was like, absolutely. I closed my laptop, scooted on in, and I was there for 2 hours talking with complete strangers about psychedelics. And that was the most like therapeutic experience I've had since my mushroom experience a year prior. And that really made me recognize just how important it is to have safe containers to explore this topic, this vast topic of psychedelics. And I came back, that night, couldn't stop thinking about psychedelics. This psychedelic meetup, and that's when I was craving for a cardiology exam, but I was like, you know what, I need to start up a meetup because there was no one in Pittsburgh for me to talk to, so I started the Pittsburgh Psychedelic Society meetup group. And from there, we meet up at a coffee shop, talk about psychedelics. And then that just catapulted into so many connections, so many people eventually starting to come together and talk about psychedelics. And that led me to then recognizing there's this big need in how to support people that want to explore safe journeying with mushrooms, but they don't have either the funds to travel out of country, or they don't have the access point to information because they see all these Reddit posts, they see all these things in articles, they don't know how to disseminate clinical research. So how do we make this accessible for all types of people to understand? So with Silo Health, we're focused on a very peer-to-peer led model where we're able to educate all types of people about how to just hold space for those that want to explore psilocybin mushrooms. A year after starting Silo Health, for me as a pharmacist, I felt very isolated as a pharmacist, seeing the anticipated legalization of psychedelics, seeing these medical frameworks being established, and no one talking about pharmacists. And for me, what's been drilled in my head and what I practice every day is that as a pharmacist, we're the most accessible point to care when it comes to the healthcare system. There's a pharmacy, and on every corner, there's a pharmacy in most cities. So why are pharmacists not part of the solution when it comes to these issues of access and safety in the psychedelic space? So through that, I came together with a group of other pharmacists who were very like-minded, and we decided to start up the Psychedelic Pharmacists Association, and that was about 3 years ago now. So the journey has really just been, I feel lonely. I feel like we should be talking more. Let's get people who I think would like to talk more about this, and we come together, and then we have beautiful systems start popping up from there.
Beautiful. All of you. Thank you for sharing. Yeah. So here on the podcast, we meet a lot of guides and facilitators and the folks doing the direct work with people. And my experience in the space of, founding and building community is its own unique animal. There's a lot to it. There's always a lot going on behind the scenes. So I would love for those folks who are in the field and interested in building their own community where they are, if you would share kind of what you have most loved about the experience of building community. Has anything really surprised you in the process? And have there been any unique challenges you've come up against in building community? Quest, let's start with you.
Yeah, I think this is like really important question. So thanks for asking. So for me, the journey itself has been what I loved, even though it comes with challenges and struggles. A book that I found really, really early on in my journey was The Alchemist. Talks about Santiago, the young shepherd who goes on a journey to the pyramids in Egypt, and leaving what's comfortable to him, right? The family, and just like going into the unknown to find the hidden treasure, right? So that's what it's felt like my journey has been since like the very beginning. I've read this book several times. I actually feel like as I'm talking about it right now, I need to read it again because it's like it helps at different phases of my life. And before I stepped into this space, I was starting to leave what was comfortable for me. And that was my time in the tech industry where I spent many, many, many years. So what I've found along this journey is that I've been able to find like genuine folks who want to help me and see me succeed, which is like great and surprising at times. Because, I've always come from this place where I felt like I had to do it on my own. And I think this is just, what I was taught from my parents, right? I can't really ask for help. I have to do it on my own. That's what a man is supposed to do. It's just a lot of stuff that I just like unlearning and relearning, and, asking and accepting help has been like a huge, huge learning curve for me. And it's been really challenging at times, but also like something that I'm starting to embrace because it's okay to ask for help, right? So the challenges that come along for me have been being a Black man in this space. How do I reach back to my community and share this knowledge and make it accessible for them, right? So one, there's not too many Black folks in the psychedelic space, right? And as I've gone along my journey, a lot of my friends and family have looked at me like, yo, why are you participating in not only just psychedelics, but like yoga, meditation? They find it weird, right? So the other piece that's been like really interesting for me is that a lot of people in Pittsburgh know me from doing hip hop. So I've lost a lot of communication with that crowd, but there have been certain folks that have been paying attention to seeing my growth. And they're like, okay, Quest, even though we might not understand, he's still, it's still Quest. And we see that this is helping them. So now they're starting to like come back around and like pop up in my yoga classes or, ask about mushrooms because they see what I'm doing along the space and how it's been like really, really helpful in, being a better human being, better man, father, son, all of those things. But it's just been a challenge for me that I'm navigating right now. How do I make it accessible for folks? So now that they're starting to, come on over, I've been like navigating, okay, what events can I put together that will blend both worlds together. So there is an opportunity, I think, with specifically the hip hop community. There's a documentary that I'm connected with a couple of folks that are putting together. It's called We Are the Medicine. I'm not in the documentary, but I'm very close with the folks that are putting it together. And this documentary is around, how hip hop and the psychedelic community can come together. Like, things have been, there's a way to bridge the gap. So like those type of events I'm seeing now are like really, really great to have, because again, it makes it accessible to, the Black community, which we all, I won't say all, but most of the folks that I know in the Black community love hip hop. So that's that language that, I need to use in order to bring yoga in, right? Or meditation or mushrooms. And then that also goes into like another challenge is that, I'm in these spaces that aren't always so welcoming, right? I've been tokenized a few times, and this also has happened in the tech space. So for me, I know it's important. I know my role that I have to play. Unfortunately, sometimes I do need to be in these spaces where I know what they're up to, but I'm in it because I need to take what I have access to and get it back to my folks, right? So it's kind of like, I know what you're doing. I'll play this game for a little bit while I'm building up my own, to where I don't have to go back and like have to get these resources, if that makes sense, because we're creating our own. That's what's been the process, like creating our own resource and table. It's just been a challenge because sometimes we don't have access to like the funding and, these stages at the conferences and whatnot. So you kind of have to navigate these rooms, right? I'm very, very aware, very intuitive. So, I know how to play the game because I played it in tech, right? In order to climb up that quote unquote corporate ladder, get what I need and like give it back to my people. So, yeah.
Beautifully said. Mm-hmm. Thank you so much. Henry, over to you. Any unique challenges, surprises, and loves in the process?
Yes, many. I guess I'll start with the surprising bit and then go to the challenges and what I've loved. What surprised me most, honestly, about the journey with Tricycle Day is how I mischaracterized who the audience would be, who the members of this community would be. I think when I started out, and I don't regret this, so it's not that, but I was writing basically to myself, so I figured that my audience would mostly look and think like me, mostly a millennial audience, maybe younger. But what has turned out to surprise me is that there are a lot of Gen X and Boomer generation folks who are reading Tricycle Day, and beyond that, I thought it would be mostly. I hate to use this word in the context of psychedelics because I don't really mean it in the sense, but I thought it would be like quote unquote consumers. But it has turned out to be more of a mix of the enthusiast side and also industry professionals. So I think I had sort of assumed that people who are in this space didn't care so much about, bringing in the flavor and they just wanted the info. But it's a reminder that we're all human and everybody wants to be entertained, right? And as far as like the challenges, some of this is related to building a community and some of it is just pure building a business, entrepreneurship. The highs are very high and the lows are very low. And, this is connected to what I love about it too. What's hard about it, I would say, is that it's easy to fall into the trap of tying my own mental health and mental state to metrics in the business. Seeing the subscriber count go up, seeing the open rate go up. I'm like, oh, I'm elated. And then, people unsubscribe. It's like, oh, I take that personally. That's my fault. That's something wrong with me. And that's something that psychedelics are actually quite helpful with. And, they give you that perspective to be able to step back and look at yourself from an objective point of view, look at your environment from an objective point of view, and realize that, there's a lot going on that isn't so self-centered. People have their own reasons for everything, and a lot of things are outside of our control, and acceptance and surrender become really important there. More tactically, I think, monetization was a challenge in the beginning, but I also just had faith that if I did something that was valuable to people, then, the self-sustaining money would come through eventually. And it's doing a lot better now. I also, have run into some issues with, and I think a lot of people have dealt with this in this space, with censorship, potentially, risking your platform is kind of scary when you're building a community in the psychedelic space. I know a lot of people have dealt with that on the social media side. I sort of naively thought I was immune from that, building my platform on email, but there's tech involvement everywhere, and things can happen. But the part that I've loved most of all, is, well, there are a few things. I mean, one is the creativity aspect of it. Just to be able to create something, put it out into the world, and have people respond to it is such a gift. I think it's our birthright to be able to create something. And I see entrepreneurship, I see content creation as an art form. And I feel such like a sense of pride and accomplishment every time I press publish. It really, it never gets old. And the part that makes it even more fun is that I get that feedback from the audience, from the community, when they respond to it, or when they, share a meme that I post on Instagram. It tells me that this content, like what I'm saying, is resonating with people. Most people who've had a psychedelic experience, they consider it to be one of the most important things that's happened to them. So it's really, I don't take it lightly, even though I'm bringing levity to this conversation. I don't take it lightly how important and profound and meaningful these experiences are. And ultimately, when I do hit those challenges, whether they're internal or external, I can always come back to this reminder, this notion that, hey, even if I fail miserably, at least I know I gambled on myself. I took a chance on something that really meant something important to me. And that's a win, that's a win no matter what.
Amazing. Thank you. Saad, how about you?
Yeah, so throughout this process, there's been a lot of things that I've loved and that surprised me, and have also been very challenging. A lot of which I resonate again with Henry and Quest, what they shared. I think the thing I love the most is just connecting, learning from people, connecting with them, going to whether it be conferences around the country, or just having conversations here in the local Pittsburgh community, and it's just like this feeling I love is when I hear about someone's story, and it just hits home, and I always get goosebumps. The amount of times I've gotten goosebumps hearing someone's story, it's always so powerful. And it might be a similar story you've already heard from someone else about finding deep meaning in an experience, or being able to work through some type of trauma and incorporate that into, more sustainable living. But it never gets old. I mean, it's just the being able to hear and learn from other people, clinician or not, psychonaut or not. There's always something you can learn and be inspired by from the people you speak with, and hear and learn from. I think the things that have been most surprising for me I guess there's a few things. I guess one would be some of just the misinformed use I see sometimes in the community. I've talked to many people where they say they love microdosing. I'm like, oh yeah, microdosing. I've benefited from it. I know many people that benefited from it. How do you microdose? And I take 1 or 2 grams every day. I'm like, okay, bud, hey, just so you know, that's not a micro. And I've had that conversation at least a dozen times. So just being able to recognize that, as much as we all hear about microdosing, and we heard about the Stamets protocol, Stamets stack, Fadiman protocol, there's still a lot of people that there's just a lot of room for improvement in our psychedelic literacy. That's how I'll put it. But also another thing that I found surprising, similar to what Quest said, is just how many people that are excited to help you out, that are excited to just take time and energy out of their day, which is finite. These are finite resources, but they're taking it to support us, and that is just to me, and just a beautiful surprise that I've seen. It's been able to help me grow as a man and as a psychedelic entrepreneur, community builder. So that's been very wonderful. And the last thing I'll touch base on is some of the challenges I've experienced throughout this process. I think it would be the first thing really was imposter syndrome. It's like, who the heck am I? Like, who the heck am I? I'm just some brown dude from middle of nowhere, Ohio. I have a PharmD, cool. Like, what? Like, who am I? I've read books on psychedelics. I've had my experiences. I care deeply about it. But why am I talking about it? Like, why do I think that I'm in this role to be able to help educate and guide others when I'm still educating and guiding myself? So it's been really challenging to balance that, to where I feel like I know a lot to at least help bring people up, but it's still important for me to recognize that there's still so much for me to learn and understand. And I don't know if it's the right term is the ego part of me. I've had to be frank, I've had criticisms about or concerns about my ego, and that was a while ago, and I've been able to really reflect on that. And when I've talked to some of my colleagues or friends about that conversation, it's nice to know. It's nice to hear them say, "Saad, we want to hear you talk more. Like, we want you to share your thoughts, share your opinions, share your perspectives." So yeah, that's been a challenge that I'm still working through. So yeah, that's that. I'll share that as one of the challenges I've had to strive to unravel throughout this process.
Thank you, all of you. Yeah, appreciate that so much. Speaking of, my next question for all of you is around business. People hear the word business and it immediately draws a whole range of projections and opinions and pontification. So I would love for you guys to reflect on how you have built your own organizations, because part of one thing I love to talk to people who haven't built a community before is, the alternatives sometimes are taking outside funding, and there are great pluses to that, but there are huge cons to that too, right? And so everyone in this is well-intentioned and hopefully, right, in how they're creating their businesses and wanting to bring accessibility in, wanting to bring reciprocity in, wanting to also make their organization self-sustaining so that we retain and the people in our community retain the creative control and direction so that we don't lose that true north, right, through our organization. So I'd love for you all to reflect on this, because I know it's one of the elephants in the room in the space at large. Quest, let's start with you.
All right. Building a business has been extremely, it's like an initiation for me. It's really, that's what it's been, because I'm coming from a world of working for someone else most of my life. Nobody in my family has built their own business. They've all were, you go to work, you collect your check and go home. So it's been a very intense journey of me, like, breaking that mindset, which can be very hard at times. Learning to put in the same amount of hours for myself when I've done that for other people for many years, right? So like, or even just going down to like organizing my time, and structuring my day, has been really a learning curve for me, especially because prior to going into this full time, which I have been for almost a year, I was always one foot in and one foot out. So I was working in tech while I was building up, my business, but I didn't fully commit. And the universe has a weird way of bringing you things that you've been wanting. And I can remember being laid off from my tech job, and it was like, all right, this is it. Go all the way in. And there's been moments where I've actually been like terrified and considered going back to a full-time job. But it's always, again, something will happen either that day or the very next day that shows that I need to continue on this path and continue to grow and just push through, the challenges. As Sai said, the imposter syndrome pops in a lot now, right? And it's been, it's been really scary some days, really, really been scary some days. Now, this is for my business, Quest to Conduit, where, I'm a sacred facilitator and integration coach. One of the things that keeps me going is when, I work with someone, right? And I hear how much they've benefited from our collaboration together, right? Because I'm not doing the healing. All I'm doing is just being a co-pilot and, putting the spotlight on you because it's all inside of you, right? I'm just here for that encouragement. And it's like a really, really loving feeling and keeps me motivated to move forward in what I'm building for my own. Now, when it comes to like some of the challenges that I kind of experienced, it's just, operations of running a business. I'm just, it's like, okay, now I need to learn this. Now I need to wear this hat. I need to wear this hat. And it's really interesting for me because in tech, I had my own startup, but there were 4 other founders, right, together. So everybody kind of had their role of things, So now that I have to wear all of the hats myself, I'm like seeing where I need help in, because I don't need to be, I don't need to wear all of the hats. Like, that's something else that I've been like breaking the mold. I don't need to do the marketing. I don't need to do, like, to a certain extent, yes, but like I can get an expert where that's their job to help me out. And then this goes back to what I said, like asking for help and realizing I don't need to do every single thing. And now that leads me into trips, Three Rivers Psychedelic Society, right? It's me and a few other partners where we all have our individual things that we're doing in the space, but it's nice to have a family, a unit together, because we're all have the same vision. We're all on the same mission, right? We understand that it's not just about the individual, it's about the collective. It's bigger than us. Yes, we came together to start this thing, but it's about the community. And we're involving the community in growing trips, right? So we're operating in a decentralized fashion, right? There's nobody in charge, right? Of course, you have the co-stewards, but no one's in charge of this thing. We're coming together. We make decisions together, right, as a unit. And it's been really, really nice. We had our first event in April, and we got a lot of good feedback around this. We're taking feedback on how does the community want to see trips grow and evolve? What events do you want to see? What can you contribute, right? Because, yes, I can do the accounting for my own stuff, but do I really want to do that? No, I'll rather hire a CPA. So if somebody wants to focus on like accounting or, fundraising, right? Let's bring you in and you can help us do that. So that's been really nice for trips. And I'm seeing how, I'm getting to a point in my life where I need to have a team for my own stuff so I can focus on, what I thoroughly enjoy, and that's working with people, So when it comes to content creation, I like how Henry had said it's an art form. I'm actually going to take that and like sit with that for today, because, you know, sometimes it can be very daunting to like sit and record hours of content. Then I have to edit. Then I have to schedule, like, you know, so I like how you said it's an art, because that is helping me shift my mindset to this, because I love art and putting art out there and just seeing people respond to it, which I have seen when I put stuff out, which is, again, that indicator to keep going. It's just like the doing that I have to sometimes push myself to do, right? Because it could be daunting, mundane tasks, but there's a reason why this is all important, and it's to grow and continue to follow my purpose. So hopefully that answers your question.
Beautifully. Thank you. Henry, over to you.
Sure. Yeah, on that point about creating being an art form, I'll just add that, you know, I think with business, the conventional wisdom is like you figure out how to do something, and then once you've figured it out, then you systematize it and you build it into an SOP so that it's repeatable. And while I think that is generally good advice for a lot of aspects of business, to me, it's important to find what are the things that fall outside of that paradigm and lean into it. Because that's where the heart and soul of creation and business really lies. So I definitely try to create SOPs for certain things, but you know, creating the content is a unique new project every single time, and I embrace that because I love that. I don't want to lose that aspect of it. But Case, to answer your questions, I mean, I'll start with the reciprocity piece. To me, reciprocity really just means giving back, and it was really important for me to build a sense of generosity into the business and the product from square one with Tricycle Day. And that's exactly why the newsletter is and always will be 100% free. You know, most of my audience or community will never become customers, and that's okay because this is a service. Now, that being said, you know, it needs to be self-sustaining, to your point. Like how do you create enough income that you're able to continue devoting time and attention and energy into continuing the project, right? So for me, you know, the solution there is an advertising model. And then, okay, so if the content is free, but it's paid for by advertisers, then that begs the question, how do you retain control? No, I never took money from investors, right? But in some sense, you know, I'm bought by the advertisers. So my solve for that is the advertisers have zero say into editorial content whatsoever. And that's an intentional decision that requires leaving money on the table. I want to be clear about that, because a really common practice in media is to do sort of incognito ads. It's called advertorial in the business. And I said, I'm not doing that. You know, and no judgment on other media publications that do it. I get it. I do. But for me, transparency needed to be it was very important to me. So, you know, my ads are very clearly labeled and compartmentalized from the rest of it, because I just didn't want that obligation hanging over my head. Is the advertiser going to be okay with me writing this article? No, it needs to be about what does the reader want to read? And the ad is there or it's not, you know? So there's that. And then as far as, I think you asked about like how to mitigate against burnout when you're building something like this. You know, for me, this is still, I don't have any W-2 employees. I do have a team, but it's kind of you know, people come and go. You know, it's not like permanent. I have contractors. I have people that I collaborate with. So ultimately, the buck does stop with me. And I've found that collaborations and partnerships have been extremely helpful. You know, like Quest was saying, for me, I'm definitely still learning about how to ask for help. I think I had a similar upbringing that really taught me resourcefulness and independence, which has served me in many ways, but also comes with its own limitations. So I'm working on that. And something that I'm kind of like repeating to myself as a mantra right now is asking for help is a superpower. So I'm finding ways to do that now in interesting kind of creative ways. Quest and I actually collaborated on something several months ago. And the way that I like to structure it is I want to share the upside with the people that I collaborate with. So we just do like, I often do profit shares with people when we collaborate on a paid product, like an event or a course or something like that. I think there's a lot of ways to bring that kind of spirit into it so that people feel like they have a sense of ownership and they're equally motivated to make something great. I have an agency side of the business now too, and that's where I really needed to bring in a team. Like it was no longer something that I could manage on my own, just not enough hours in the day. And I didn't frankly really want to do it all. So I have a small team and they're compensated on profit share on that aspect of the business.
Thank you so much. Saad.
Thank you, guys. Casey, you mind just repeating the question for me? I have a lot of thoughts right now. I just want to make sure
Yeah, it was a big question. It was framed around the topic of building a business, and how you build a sustainable, self-directed, self-sustaining business. It's one of the challenges that I talk to and everybody in the space is how do we take this earth-based, natural, ancient, indigenous healing and stuff it into the boxes of modern society? And that's the rub. Like we can't completely be outside and we can't completely be within. And so it's created this novelty and this innovation from the inside out and outside in. So that's the topic.
Yeah, so I'll speak about what we've done with Silo Health. So for us, it's like, we don't take any outside money, like any funding, any investments. It was completely out of my own paycheck for the first few years until we launched our peer support program. And I'm happy to say that for the last year and 8 months or so, year and 9 months, it's been fully, self-driven. So I'm really happy about that. For the peer support program, that's our only, product on the market. And although people can purchase it to get a certificate of completion, we still have it completely open access. So you can go on YouTube, you can go on our website and watch the entire course from start to finish. There's no like quizzes or anything in the free to access program, but people can still digest all of the content, see all the citations, watch everything as if they were taking the actual course. For those that do want the certificate, we have like a no questions asked scholarship form. So at the beginning, it was just, hey, if you're interested in a scholarship, email me here, and I'll get some emails that are multiple paragraphs long about why they want a scholarship, and I'll get an email saying, hey, I want a scholarship. That's it. And no, regardless of their need defined, their story. It's like, okay, absolutely. I've enrolled you in the program, let us know what you think. So it's just really being about giving back to people that, are asking for help or that are looking for this information, because we're not trying to gatekeep it, but as a business, it's not sustainable for me to continue paying out of my paycheck to just keep it alive. So that's something that we're proud of at Silo Health is just the ability to meet people where they're at and all types of approaches to ensure that they get the information that they're looking for. Some of the other aspects there would just be like some of the additional offerings we provide through Silo Health. So every month we offer a variety of integration workshops where, collaborations, partnerships here are crucial. We have people that are breathwork facilitators on our team that we collaborate with. Women's workshop facilitators, people that are integration coaches, and they hold containers for our community to just sign up for free. And they're able to get a Zoom link sent to them via email. And then on that date and time, they're able to be in a group setting, processing their experiences or holding space for others as they process their experiences. So that way, people always have accessible integration support at their fingertips and in a group setting too. So yeah, I think that when it comes to just trying to balance, a psychedelic business and making sure that we are, ensuring reciprocity and access to the community, it's just like about, what's your model? Like, what are you willing to leave on the table to support the greater vision of it all? And how do we make sure that it is people focused. Because for me, I've always been concerned that as soon as you bring in an outside investor, depending on their intentions, it's going to be not about how do you serve the people, but how do you get the money back? And that's something that I never really wanted to focus on.
Thank you, all of you. I think it's so important to like shed some light and share the behind the scenes with people, because especially when the ballet looks so seamless from the outside, it usually hides how much is going on behind the scenes. And as we say, sourcing matters. Resourcing really matters, and the source and distribution and having it self-sustaining all is huge. So I don't think, to Henry's point, a lot of people realize that a lot of the models, especially when it comes to media and platforms and stages and conferences, it's very pay to play, right? And the biggest compliment I get on our podcast is listeners go, how do you find these amazing people? I've never heard of them. They're phenomenal. I'm like, I've set up the podcast where my community and my programs sustain the podcast. Each and every episode, there's 17 people work on each and every episode. And I could either get outside funding, I could sell mattresses, I could get a supplement company to pay for that. But it was really important to me that everybody who is in our microdosing community has some skin in the game of the podcast and has a role to play in the bringing forth of the voices that we're able to share. So I am able to choose to feature people who are, yes, have a vision and insight, not necessarily just the resources and a product to sell or have funding, right? So thank you. Thank you so much. I want to do a little speed round with you guys. Let's start with Quest. So macro or micro?
Macro.
Favorite psychedelic?
It's going to be the sacred mushrooms.
Right on. Psychedelic idol?
That will be Kalindi E. actually.
Ooh, share more.
Yeah, Kalindi E has a community. He's a Black elder that passed away a couple of years ago, but their community is based out of Detroit. So they were actually like the first ones to get the criminalization of mushrooms in Detroit. And, he has this philosophy of, going deep with the mushrooms at high doses. So that's why my first answer is macro, because he's a elder that I look up to, learn from. And he's about not really the healing aspect of it, but it's the exploration. So a lot of, if you can imagine Marvel and Doctor Strange going through the multiverse, that's his whole thing.
Love it. How about your favorite book on psychedelics?
Yeah, so actually Psychedelic Integration by Mark B. I always mess up the last name, but the last name starts with A. And there's another one, Plants of the Gods are two of my favorites.
Nice. And if you microdose, what is your favorite protocol?
Yeah, so I kind of go in between the Fadiman and like my intuitive protocol when I do microdose. I don't want to like just stick to, the one rule that comes out. So I trust my intuition a lot, but it's really going to be like a 3-day on, 2-day off kind of situation. And, I think that's inspiration from the Fadiman, but I trust my intuition a lot on that when I do microdose. So that's my answer.
Nice. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Henry, let's go to you. Macro or micro?
Macro.
I figured if somebody's
macro
first
to break it all down, and maybe micro to rebuild.
How about your favorite psychedelic?
I got to give it to 5-MeO-DMT, my first love. And it really, really changed me in a permanent, irreversible way.
Beautiful. Psychedelic idol?
Richard Alpert, aka Ram Dass.
Favorite book on psychedelics?
Be Here Now, along the same lines. Not technically about psychedelics, but there's some themes in there for sure.
Strong. And if you microdose, your favorite protocol?
I wasn't really, I never really got into microdosing until fairly recently, but I'm really enjoying a twice a week LSD microdose, Monday and Thursday,
Mm.
the 2 days that I do my writing, and I just get locked in.
I had a feeling you were going to say that. uh, uh, love it. Thank you. Saad, macro or micro?
Macro, of course.
And favorite psychedelic?
Psilocybin mushrooms.
A psychedelic idol?
I got to go with McKenna, Terrence McKenna.
Good choice. Favorite book on psychedelics?
Yep, the Handbook of Medical Hallucinogens, written by Grob and Grigsby. That's an
Ooh.
amazing research-informed overview on every psychedelic, different indications, the history of it all, the pharmacology of it all. Very digestible, a lot of great graphics in there. So I love that book.
Nice. Share the title once more. I know that's going to be a new one on a lot of listeners.
Yep, the Handbook of Medical Hallucinogens, edited by Grob and Grigsby.
Nice. All right. And your favorite microdose protocol?
I think the Fadiman is one. Fadiman is one that I usually educate folks on. Again, as a pharmacist, I don't microdose actively, so like I said, I want to put that disclaimer out there. But yeah, I think the starting off with Fadiman, and then what we generally see is the ability to have your own intuition and your own relationship with your microdosing protocol.
Great. Thank you. Thank you for playing along with me.
You got it.
So I love, the field is moving so quickly now. Saad and I first met, 4 or 5 years ago, and it blows my mind, like, to see how far everything has come in the last just 4 or 5 years. I'd love for you to share, first, if there's anything kind of weighing heavily on your mind and your heart right now in terms of problems or cautions or things that you see happening in the field, in the space presently right now that is kind of weighing on you. Quest, let's start with you.
Yeah. So something that I share with a lot of the folks that I work with, just like using my own voice, is that psychedelics are just a tool, right? There's a many ways to get to the end of the tunnel, right? Whether that's yoga, meditation, breath work, a lot of folks can consider psychedelics to be like that magic bullet. And it's not that, right? There's still work that needs to be done. But again, at the same time, psychedelics are not for everybody, So there are many ways to, get to the end of the tunnel. Like for myself, I started with meditation, and then it was yoga, and then psychedelics came. So I want to just, remind folks that, there's many ways to get to where you are going and explore, right? The other thing that I would like to share as far as, what's weighing on my heart about the current state of the psychedelic space is that, share resources, right? Share the resources. Saad, Henry, Casey, I appreciate you all because you are, again, sharing your resources with me, helping spotlight, folks like myself, those collaborations. That's super, super important. It doesn't always have to be monetary exchange, right? It could be, hey, let's collaborate on this and go in together and see what we can do to uplift each other. I think a lot of that needs to happen a lot more, especially with people of color, BIPOC community. Again, I want to thank you all for having me here because you're breaking that mold that we face quite a bit. And again, that just kind of goes back to resources, access, breaking down those barriers, helping break down those barriers for folks like myself. I just want to appreciate you all. And I think that needs to continue to happen in the growing space because it's moving really fast and we can't leave anybody out, right? And that's everybody, not just the BIPOC community, but the indigenous communities that have been working with these medicines for many, many years, right? We need to bring everybody and make sure they all have access to the medicine and not forget anyone, really. So that's what I have to share.
Beautiful. Thank you. Henry.
Yeah, I'm generally a pretty optimistic guy, Casey, but what I'll say here is there is one sort of looming fear that's been hanging over me ever since I dove deep into everything that's happening. I've been following it really closely since writing the newsletter. And, my biggest concern is that as much as I am all for, the fast moving medicalization of psychedelic pharma, if you will, my concern is that progress could erase the gains that have been made in destigmatizing natural plant and fungi medicine. What could happen in like the bad case scenario is that after some of these novel analogs gain FDA approval, the companies that invested millions, sometimes billions of dollars in moving them through the regulatory pathway could use their special interest lobbying power to basically convince, Congress that natural medicine is unsafe and we have to stop the wave of decriminalization. I really think that regulatory capture is ugly and one of the worst parts of our system of government. So that is my fear. It doesn't keep me up at night, but it is something that I watch out for. And I'm just, I'm hoping, I'm hoping that that's not what happens.
Outstanding. Thank you. Saad, how about you?
I would say the exact same fear as Henry's. I mean, as a pharmacist, I see the benefits and some of the, the approach the FDA has to approving medications. It's not flawless, but it's a system that's established. But the concern is, what about people that aren't clinicians that want to work with the medicine? What about people that don't have, what about people that have that deep distrust and mistrust in the medical framework? If we were to only solely focus on the FDA approval of these compounds, then we completely ostracize so many communities that have already been negatively impacted by our existing healthcare system. And yeah, again, to Henry's point, like, I'm always concerned that once these are approved, there is money talks, and there will be potential incentivization to ensure that the only way to access these are going to be through a strict REMS program with specialty pharmacy and licensed centers that are providing synthetic psychedelics. And although the spirit is arguably still there in those experiences, that is the antithesis of access and equitable care and ensuring the inclusivity of all types of people to be a part of that system. So that's a huge huge concern of mine as the space evolves. The other thing I'll share is also a lot of people that I've spoken to, they'll talk about how they're wanting to prepare for a psychedelic experience. And I always like to talk about the matrix that they're a part of. So specifically, like, who in their family or community or friends are aware of their curiosity or interest in exploring this compound, this medicine. And when they share that, my husband would not be into this. Like, I have not told my husband about this. Or like, I'm afraid of what so and so will say. Like, I get it, I do, but I think that we're at the point now to where we can let the research talk. We can let the docuseries do their thing, and we as individuals, regardless of being a clinician, regardless of being a facilitator, regardless of having an amazing psychedelic newsletter, a psychedelic microdosing community, we as individuals can have such a huge impact on shifting the mindset of what psychedelics are, and really changing the minds as to recognizing that this is more than just taking a trip and having fun, right? That's like the stigma of it, and there's no issue with having fun, but it's recognizing that there's so much more that can be had through that fun or through that process. So it's really just the concern is the lack of folks that feel ready to talk to their inner circle about what they're interested in being psychedelics.
Beautiful. All of you. Thank you. So, in closing, I love to ask all of my guests to completely suspend reality. No gatekeeping, no regulations. I know it's hard to do, but if you had your dream of dreams and kind of your wildest imagination, how could you see earth medicines and psychedelics being incorporated into our society where we are right now in a safe, effective, meaningful, culture shifting way? Saad, let's start with you.
Mm-hmm. I've always had this vision of just community wellness centers that focus on meeting people where they're at in their local community, when it comes to like what they're interested in exploring with psychedelics. So from microdosing to concert, museum, hyperdosing to, of course, the macro inner exploration, limiting all external stimuli, just being able to give people the option to choose their approach and work with members of their community in their community to have these types of experiences. We look at alcohol right now, and that is the norm. You have safe consumption sites being bars where there's some type of agreed upon, approach to what to do, what not to do at a bar, limitations of how much alcohol can be consumed. So, I envision safe consumption sites, but focused on psychedelic experiencing in a community setting led by the community for the community. And I've always imagined just like being able to bring in like local musicians for concert dosing experiences or local artists to platform their artwork for like more of this museum dosing style experiences. And just letting it be a center for the community. It's not about flying out to so-and-so and having this experience. That's amazing. And that should always be an option. But like, how do we keep it in the community? How do we keep it in the zip code? Because from there, if everyone's on the same page, I think that can have a huge impact on tackling a lot of the political challenges in that local community too, and establishing systems that are self-sustainable, community governed to, whether it be supporting childhood education to tackling food insecurity, just being able to bring people together that fundamentally have the same ethos and mission and vision, and then letting that unfold to see what the greater benefits could be for those groups of people that embrace this medicine. So yeah, safe consumption sites, I guess, is what it comes down to.
Love it. Love it. Henry, how about you?
So I really like what Saad just said, and I'll build on it. But first, I'll just say I think my ideal view is that there's total decriminalization of psychedelics. I think that we should also have legal and regulated psychedelic therapy, both on the diagnosable psychiatric side and also more the non-medical side, like we're seeing in Oregon. I think those should both coexist. And it would be amazing to have recreational dispensaries too. I don't think there's anything wrong with the safe, self-guided use of psychedelics. Obviously, I would like this all to happen, not at the expense of the abundant supply of natural resources. I don't want any threat of overharvesting or extinction of any of these earth medicines. I think that everyone should have cognitive liberty and reasonable access. And of course, no one should be forced. But what Saad said really inspired me to think more about whether you want to call it a community, or what's happening a lot right now is the rise of psychedelic faith-based organizations, churches. I think that as a society, we obviously have a mental health crisis, but there's also sort of a crisis of purpose, crisis of meaning, because many people are becoming disenfranchised with traditional religions with good reason. I totally get that. I've never been a very religious person, and it wasn't until I found my yoga practice and developed a personal, intimate connection to the divine on my own terms that I really found any sort of value in that conversation at all. So I think it could be really powerful to bring psychedelics more into mainstream consciousness through that model, like kind of an alternative to the church where people can connect with family, introduce psychedelics potentially, as an initiation, a rite of passage, almost like in the like the first communion in Catholicism. So yeah, I guess what it comes down to really is I want there to be many ways that people can experience these, because they are so malleable and flexible in the way that we can use them. Intention matters so much, and we should be able to meet people where they are and with what they need.
Beautiful. Quest.
Wow. Saad and Henry, you both shared like beautiful visions. I'm sitting there like seeing it play out. It's really, really great to see. I think I personally agree with both of those. What I would like to add to that is going to be a world where the science and the spiritual can meet together. I think they both play a super important part, in this world, because they're both together, Unfortunately, you will see the research science side forget about the mystical. And then you will also see the spiritual side, like be too spiritual and forget about, the science piece. I've been on the spiritual side where I completely did not think about the, the science and the research until I continued down my journey and seeing how important it is, right? And how these things work with our brain. And, it's a balance that I would like to see take place, especially when it comes to, 5-MeO, DMT, because that's like the God molecule, right? And you will have depending on the dose, most likely going to have a super, super mystical experience, right? But there's still science behind it and how it works with the brain. There's still, you want to keep people safe. There's contraindications that you need to be aware of. So I think there's a place for both. And when I say that too, right, having seats at those tables when changes are being made, right? Decisions are being made within, companies. And even I'm just going to go in and say it. I don't want to try synthetic mushrooms. I'm just going to be honest. I don't want to do it. I just feel like you're removing the spirit out of that. But, maybe I'll try it one day. We'll see. Right. But yeah, I think it's just, I'm not going to go into too much of what Saad and Henry already shared, because I definitely agree with that. But, a world with a mystical, spiritual, and the science can come together and sit down at the table like, hey, let's build this thing together. Can't have one without the other. I would love to see that, because they're really, really important. Quick thing I'll share where this really popped up. I was speaking at UPenn in Philadelphia, right? And there were a lot of doctors, scientists talking about, the research that they're doing with animals and psychedelics, right? And I was the only spiritual, mystical person at the conference. And I went to go speak about a program, a BIPOC psychedelic leadership program that I was involved in at the time. And I said that on the stage, like, hey, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a scientist. I come from this world. And it was really interesting because after I was sharing my experience and what I'm a lot more familiar with, I had conversations with these doctors and scientists after, the conference was done. We were sitting at the dinner table and they were asking me tons of questions around, the mystical and the spiritual experience of working with these, these sacred earth medicines. And it was really interesting because they were really, really curious. Wow, this happens beyond just how it works with the brain. Yes, there's a lot that goes on, and it was really neat. Still, and they were embracing me. So I want to see that more happen a lot more for sure. So
beautiful. Appreciate all of you so, so much and everything you've shared today. So, so beautiful. So for folks who want to see you, follow you, work with you, support your work and evolution, where can they find you? Quest, let's start with you.
Yes. So I can be reached at www.questtheconduit.com. And that's just how it sounds, QUEST, theconduit.com. You'll see all my social media, Instagram, all of that is Quest the Conduit. And then also, if you are in Pennsylvania, there's tripspgh.org. That's tripspgh.org. That's Three Rivers Psychedelic Society. You'll see the stuff that we're doing in the community. And if you need any support along your journey, wherever you're at, that's integration coaching or, the working with sacred earth medicines as far as preparation or just anything, questtheconduit.com. You'll see everything that I bring to the world as far as serving the people here.
Nice. Henry, how about you?
If any of your listeners want to get smarter about psychedelics in under 10 minutes a week, you can go to www.tricycleday.com and subscribe for free. I never share or sell anyone's personal data, and you can unsubscribe at any time. And aside from that, if you are more along the lines of you're into memes, you're just in it for the humor, then follow Tricycle Day on Instagram at Tricycle Day.
Highly, highly recommend. Thank you. Sad, how about you?
Yep. So you can find our work at Silo Health over at www.silohealth.co. And if you're interested in joining the community of pharmacists and pharmacist allies, you check out psychedelicpharmacist.org. And then if you ever want to just connect with me one-on-one, I am active on LinkedIn and Instagram. So LinkedIn, just first and last name. Instagram is at first and last name without the punctuation and grammar, or the punctuation there. No comma, no hyphen.
Wonderful. And Sad, if folks wanted to learn specifically about the peer supporter program, is that under Silo Health?
Yep. silohealth.co/PPS, or on the main website, you'll see peer support course as one of the menu options. You can check it out there. And again, you can watch it for free, or if you decide to enroll in the certificate program, there are different access points to that.
Our listeners are going to support you. Thank you. Thank you all so much. And we'll put all those links too in the show notes for all of you. So thank you all so much for being with us today. And thank you to our listeners for hanging out with us. We'll see you back in a couple weeks from today. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Casey.
Thank you for listening to today's episode of the Microdosing for Healing podcast. Are you ready to take the next step? Please visit us at microdosingforhealing.com to access our free Microdosing 101 workshop. In it, you'll learn more about our diverse community, our supportive group programs, and discover if earth medicine practice might be right for you. See you in the next episode.